Bank of America, bullish target for the S&P 500. It's been hiked to 5,400, maybe way too tame for our countdown closer. Infrastructure Capital Advisor CEO Jay Hatfield has an even bigger target for the broader market index. All right, spit it out, Jay.
So we went from 5,500, which we started at the beginning of the year, so we were one of the more bullish. Now we're at 5,750. That's probably the risk is to the upside, and you're really even seeing it today. AI is supporting the market before we get the rate cuts, and then we think we'll get summer rate cuts and a power rally during the summer.
We were pointing out that the chip makers were going nuts. There were 7 of them that we showed at the top of the show, all of them hitting records of different levels, of different time periods, but all of them at least a 52-week high on very little news. So I think you're right on that level, but we do have other, as we call them, exogenous events going on that it appears the market has been very cavalier about, whether it's the war in the Middle East, the real problems between Russia and Ukraine, Russia's invasion, North Korea can always be a problem. Do you take that into account?
Well, there's always random risk factors, but it's critical really to focus on monetary policy because monetary policy, a lot of people don't appreciate when central banks cut rates, they inject liquidity. And so you get the kind of rallies you had in 21. You mentioned Bitcoin in the previous segment. You get these kind of massive liquidity type rallies, and they tend to overwhelm all the political noise and all the bad events coming from overseas.
You are a dividend player. So let's just get people, because they love in this particular Countdown Closer segment, ideas. These are companies that pay decent dividends and you feel are incredibly strong. Let's call them Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Bloomin' Brands, and Kilroy. We're putting up the dividends that they pay. Bloomin' Brands 3.7%, Kilroy 6%. How do you judge whether a dividend stock is a good stock?
Well, we look at companies that trade at reasonable multiples and have good coverage of dividends. You want companies that retain earnings, invest them, and build their business so they could cover them better. And we like Kilroy really because it plays into the AI theme. They own a lot of, most of their office buildings are in San Francisco and other tech hubs. And Blooming Brands has an activist involved. Those are both held by our S-Cap fund. And we also think small caps will outperform if we're right about rate cuts.
Small caps, yeah. And speaking of rate cuts, really quickly, Raphael Bostic of the Atlanta Fed says 2 rate cuts, non-sequential in the second half of the year, meaning one could be in May and one could then be at a different point. Does that upend your 5,700
It doesn't,
target?
but only because we think the ECB will cut in June and you'll have global rate cuts. In fact, he might have read our notes because that's consistent with July and then having we think 3 cuts, not 2 cuts.
Well, we like your flag planted in a 5,700 for the S&P. We'll see if it happens. Great to have you, Jim.